Welcome back to the Cynthia Clark Book Club. We are reading Chapter 6 of The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. The name of the chapter is Casting the Burden and Pressing the Subconscious. This is a short book. It only has 10 chapters, and I'm going to read those chapters to you. But before I do that, let me tell you how it works. I am going to post this video in YouTube. I am going to post it in Facebook. If there is something in the book or in this chapter that you would like to comment on, post your comment and we can have a conversation. Otherwise, I'll just do what I like to do anyway, which is read. If you look posted somewhere in YouTube or on Facebook, you'll see a link to my webpage. And so if you'd like a free PDF copy of the book that we're reading, you can click on the image of the book on my webpage, and you can get a free PDF file of the book and you can read along. Otherwise, you can just listen to it on YouTube, through Facebook, and we can have a conversation if you'd like to. So let me go ahead and read the 10 chapters of this book. We're on chapter 6, but the 10 chapters in this book are: number 1, the game; number 2, the law of prosperity; number 3, the power of the word; number 4, the law of non-resistance; 5, the law of karma and the law of forgiveness; 6, which is the chapter we're reading now, casting the burden and pressing the subconscious; 7, love; 8, intuition or guidance; 9, perfect self-expression or the divine design; and 10, denials and affirmations. So let's get started. When man knows his own powers and the workings of his mind, his great desire is to find an easy and quick way to impress the subconscious with good. For simply an intellectual knowledge of the truth will not bring results. In my own case, I found the easiest way is in casting the burden. A metaphysician once explained it in this manner. He said, the only thing which gives anything weight in nature is the law of gravitation. And if a boulder could be taken high above the planet, there will be no weight in that boulder. And that is what Jesus Christ meant when he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He had overcome the world vibration and functioned in the 4th dimensional realm, where there is only perfection, completion, life, and joy. Pause. When I think of the 4th dimensional realm, I think they're talking about the world of our imagination. In our imagination, we can make things any way we want. And so when I think of the 4th dimensional realm, I think of that, the fact that I could dream it as good as it can get. Okay, back to the book. He said, come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We are also told in the 55th Psalm to cast thy burden upon the Lord. Many passages in the Bible state that the battle is God, not man's, and that man is always to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. In a previous chapter in this book, Florence recommends that we replace the word Lord when we read the Bible with law, just to get a different understanding, a more metaphysical understanding of the book, because the Bible can be looked at in different ways. It could be looked at literally, it could be looked at metaphysically, it could be looked at historically, or it can be looked at as a book of parables. That's up to you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this chapter again using the word law instead of Lord. So it says, we are also told in the 55th Psalm to cast thy burden upon the law. And when I read it that way, I think about universal law. Let's keep going. Many passages in the Bible state that the battle is God's, not man's, and that man is always to stand still and see the salvation of the law, that is universal law. This indicates that the superconscious mind, or Christ mind within, is the department which fights man's battles and relieves him of burdens. I'm going to read that again using the female principle. This indicates that the superconscious mind, or Christ within, is the department which fights woman's battle and relieves her of burdens. Another thing that this author has stated in previous chapters is when you come across an affirmation, you can change the words to make it suit you. You can change the words or alter the words where it resonates more with you. So I'm going to change the words a little bit so that it resonates with me. When I read Christ within, I change it in my mind to the divinity within, the God within me. And that just is more universal for me. Christ within is great, especially if you're a Christian. But if you don't belong to a religion or would prefer something more universal, I like to say the divinity within. So it says, this indicates that the superconscious mind, or divinity within, is the department which fights man's battles and relieves him of burdens. We see, therefore, that man violates law if he carries a burden. And a burden is an adverse thought or condition, and this thought or condition has its root in the subconscious. It seems almost impossible to make any headway directing the subconscious from the conscious or reasoning mind, as the reasoning mind, the intellect, is limited in its conceptions and filled with doubts and fears. How scientific it then is to cast the burden upon the superconscious mind, or Christ within, or for me, divinity within, where it is made light or dissolved into its native nothingness. When I think about this and it says how scientific it is to cast the burden upon the superconscious mind, what it makes me think of are certain situations that we don't have control over, or physical control over. In those cases, you do all that you can do, but then you need to use that divinity or that strength or that power within you. You need to call upon that to help you in situations that seem out of your control. It's kind of like, I like what Esther Hicks says. She says, it's like the universe is your manager. And so it's certain things that you do, but then there's certain things you turn over to your manager to handle for you, so you're not overwhelmed. So when you look at the Christ within, or the divinity within, or that power within, you can look at it as your manager to help you in certain situations. So let's get back to the book. How scientific it is then to cast the burden upon the superconscious mind, where it is made light or dissolved into its native nothingness. For example, a woman in urgent need of money made light upon the Christ within, or the divinity within, the superconscious, with the statement, I cast this burden of lack on the Christ within, and I go free to have plenty. The belief in lack was her burden, and as she cast it upon the superconscious, with its belief of plenty, an avalanche of supply was the result. We read, the Christ in you, the hope of glory. And I read it, the divinity in me, the hope of glory. Another example, one of my students had been given a new piano, and there was no room in her studio for it until she had moved out the old one. She was in a state of perplexity. She wanted to keep the old piano, but knew of no place to send it. And remember, this book was written back in 1925, so they probably didn't have storage facilities. But anyway, we get the gist of it. She became desperate, as the new piano was to be sent immediately. In fact, was on its way with no place to put it. She said it came to her mind to repeat, I cast this burden on the Christ within and go free. So she basically turned it over to her universal manager to handle the situation. A few moments later, her phone rang, and a woman friend asked if she might rent her old piano, and it was moved out a few minutes before the new one arrived. I knew a woman whose burden was resentment. She said, I cast this burden of resentment on the Christ within, and I go free to be loving, harmonious, and happy. The almighty superconscious flooded the subconscious with love, and her whole life was changed. For years, resentment had held her in a state of torment and imprisoned her soul, the subconscious mind. The statement should be made over and over and over, sometimes for hours at a time, silently or audibly, with quietness but determination. Excuse my wine. I have often compared it to winding up a Victrola. We must wind ourselves up with spoken words. I have noticed in casting the burden, after a little while, one seems to see clearly. It is impossible to have clear vision while in the throes of carnal mind. Doubts and fears poison the mind and body, and imagination runs riot, attracting disaster and disease. I steadily repeated the affirmation, I cast this burden on the Christ within and go free. The vision clears, and with it a feeling of relief, and sooner or later comes the manifestation of good, be it health, happiness, or supply. One of my students once asked me to explain the darkness before the dawn. I referred in a preceding chapter to the fact that often before the big demonstration, everything seems to go wrong, and deep depression clouds the consciousness. It means that out of the subconscious are rising the doubts and fears of the ages. The old derelicts of the subconscious rise to the surface to be put out. This makes me think of sometimes when people are like cleansing their bodies, those toxins start coming out, and sometimes they come out in people's skin and they break out. And so there's nothing wrong with getting rid of the toxins. You just kind of you got to deal with the breakout in the process. So that's what this reminds me of, where it says it's darkest before the dawn, and it seems before something really good happens, it seems like right before the really good comes, something really bad happens. And it says that it means that out of the subconscious are rising the doubts and fears of the ages. So those doubts and fears are coming out to be rid of, just like sometimes toxins may come out in the skin as you're getting rid of them. Anyway, let's keep going. It is then that man should clap his cymbals like Jehoshaphat. I had to figure out how to pronounce it. And give thanks that he is saved, even though he seems surrounded by the enemy, which is the situation of lack or disease. The student continued, how long must one remain in the dark? And I replied, until one can see in the dark. And casting the burden enables one to see in the dark. So in your darkest times, you just got to know that your universal manager is working on the situation. You got to turn it over or surrender it to your manager. Okay, in order to impress the subconscious, active faith is always essential. I have a brother, one of my brothers, and he's always saying, I don't believe in that stuff. You got to work. And yeah, you do. And here she talks, you know, you have to put forth some effort. There's some action involved. And in here, she calls it active faith. She says that it's essential. Faith without works is dead. In these chapters, I have endeavored to bring out this point. Jesus Christ showed active faith when he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground before he gave thanks for the loaves and the fishes. I will give another example showing how necessary this step is. In fact, active faith is the bridge over which man passes to his promised land. Through misunderstanding, a woman had been separated from her husband, whom she loved deeply. He refused all offers of reconciliation and would not communicate with her in any way. Coming into the knowledge of spiritual law, she denied the appearance of separation. She made this statement: there is no separation in divine mind. Therefore, I cannot be separated from the love and companionship which are mine by divine right. She showed active faith by arranging a place for him at the table every day, thereby impressing the subconscious with a picture of his return. Over a year passed, but she never wavered, and one day he walked in. The subconscious is often impressed through music. Music has a fourth dimensional quality and releases the soul from imprisonment. It makes wonderful things seem possible and easy of accomplishment. I believe that. Sometimes I'll listen to certain songs, and as I'm listening to them, I'll start imagining in my mind all these wonderful and beautiful scenarios in my life. In fact, after I finish reading this book, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get in the zone with some good songs. I think I'm gonna listen to Bad Mama Jamma by Carl Carlton. That's my nephew's dog. Try to ignore the dog. Okay, back to the book. I have a friend who uses her Victrola daily for this purpose. It puts her in a perfect harmony and releases the imagination. Another woman often dances while making her affirmations. The rhythm and harmony of music and motion carry her words forth with tremendous power. The student must remember also not to despise the day of small things. Invariably, before a demonstration comes signs of land. Before the big thing that you ask for comes, sometimes you'll get a sign that it's on its way. And so let's look at what that means. Before Columbus reached America, he saw birds and twigs which showed him that land was near. So it is with a demonstration, but often the student mistakes it for the demonstration itself and is disappointed. For example, a woman had spoken the word for a set of dishes. Not long afterwards, a friend gave her a dish which was old and cracked. She came to me and said, well, I asked for a set of dishes and all I got was a cracked plate. I replied, the plate was only signs of land. It shows your dishes are coming. Look upon it as birds and seaweeds. And not long afterwards, the dishes came. Continually make believing impresses the subconscious. If one makes believe he is rich and makes believe she is successful, in due time she will reap. I love that one because I just know that I'm meant to be wealthy and rich, so I need to continue make believing. Children are always make believing, and except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. For example, I know of a woman who was very poor, but no one could make her feel poor. She earned a small amount of money from rich friends who constantly reminded her of her poverty and to be careful and save. Regardless of their admonition, she would spend all her earnings on a hat or make someone a gift and be in a rapturous state of mind. Her thoughts were always centered on beautiful clothes and rings and things, but without envying others. She lived in the world of the wondrous, and only riches seemed to be real to her. Before long, she married a rich man, and the rings and things became visible. I do not know whether the man was a divine selection, but opulence had to manifest in her life as she had imagined only opulence. You know what? If you keep your eyes focused upwards, you'll go up. If you keep your mind, if you allow your mind to go down for an extended amount of time, you will go down. So this chick kept her mind on opulence, and it manifested in her life. Okay, there is no peace or happiness for man until he erased all fear from his subconscious. Fear is misdirected energy and must be redirected or transmuted into faith. Jesus Christ said, "Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? All things are possible to him that believeth." I am asked so often by my students, how can I get rid of fear? I reply, by walking up to the thing you are afraid of. The lion takes its fierceness from your fear. Walk up to the lion and he will disappear. Run away and he runs after you. I have shown in previous chapters how the lion of lack disappeared when the individual spent money fearlessly, showing faith that God was his supply and therefore unfailing. I'm going to read that again using the female principle. I have shown in previous chapters how the lion of lack disappeared when the individual spent money fearlessly, showing faith that God was her supply and therefore unfailing. You know what? When I first got out of college, I had a prosperity consciousness. Got out of college, got my job, got my first apartment in Lake Meadows apartment, had my car, car note, car insurance, student loan, and it got rough for a minute because I didn't really know how to manage my money. And then from there, I started getting raises and stuff like that because I'm a hard worker and ambitious, and if there's a promotion, then I was going to go for the promotion, and I got those promotions. I may not have gotten on the first try, but every time I wanted a promotion, I worked and I got the promotion that I wanted. And I always felt like I could get money if I needed to. And I remember a point, this is what happened. When I got pregnant with my daughter, I remember not wanting to put her in a daycare as soon as, she was born or whatever, 6 months or 6 weeks, however long you get after you have a baby, to go back to work. So I was tormented by that decision. And I said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to stay at home and be with Naja while she's a little girl. And during that process, it was hard for me to have to depend on someone else, which was my husband. He did a fabulous job. He did. It's just that I started to embrace a poverty consciousness through that process. And then when we separated, it increased. So I took on a poverty consciousness. Now I've shaken it off because I've kind of gone through some different situations, and I'm coming out of a poverty consciousness and going into a wealth consciousness. So when I read this, it reminds me of that. I'm going to read that chapter again. That paragraph again. It says, I have shown in previous chapters how the lion of lack disappeared when the individual spent money fearlessly, showing faith that God was his supply and therefore unfailing. When I went into that poverty consciousness, I would be concerned about spending money, even on things that I really, really needed. And one of the things that I've learned from this book and other books is to spend fearlessly with wisdom. So if it's something that you need, even if the money is short, take care of yourself, get those things that you need, and know that more money will come in to get the other things that you need. And then over time, as you cast the burden of lack on your universal manager, as I've done, cast the burden of lack on my universal manager to take care of certain things while I work on other things, then money will just start flowing in, and you'll end up having the things that you need. And so let's keep going. Many of my students have come out of the bondage of poverty and are now bountifully supplied through losing all fear of letting money go out. The subconscious is impressed with the truth that God is the giver and the gift. Therefore, as one is one with the giver, he is one with the gift. A splendid statement is, I now thank God the giver for God the gift. Man has so long separated himself from his good and his supply through thoughts of separation and lack that sometimes it takes a dynamite to dislodge this false idea from the subconscious. And the dynamite is a big situation. We see in the foregoing illustration how the individual was freed from his bondage by showing fearlessness. Man should watch himself hourly to detect if his motive for action is fear or faith. You know what? I'm going to flip some of these into she and he, she and her, just because I want to as I read this, because I'm a she, so sometimes I need to read it like it's talking about me instead of he or him. So anyway, choose ye this day whom ye shall serve, fear or faith. Perhaps one's fear is of personality. Then do not avoid the people feared. Be willing to meet them cheerfully, and they will either prove golden links in the chain of one's good or disappear harmoniously from one's pathway. Perhaps one's fear is of disease or germs. Then one should be fearless and undisturbed in a germ-laden situation, and she would be immune. One can only contract germs while vibrating at the same rate as the germ, and fear drags men down to the level of the germ. So if you vibrate at the level of a germ, then that germ can attach to you. But if you vibrate at a higher level, it won't be attracted to you. That's very interesting. Of course, the disease-laden germ is the product of the carnal mind, as all thought must objectify. Germs do not exist in the superconscious or divine mind, therefore are the product of man's vain imagination. In the twinkling of an eye, woman's release will come when she realizes there is no power in evil. I love this statement. There is no power in evil. The material world will fade away, and the fourth dimensional world, the world of the wondrous, will swing into manifestation. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things have passed away.